Oh my God, it's such an honor to be here tonight, everybody. I'm going to pop this up a bit. And I can't tell you what a joy it gives me to see the top third of everyone's face tonight. I'll take what I can get. But right now, what I want to do is take you to Sydney, Australia in 1935. Now, then as now, beaches were very popular. One place people particularly liked to go was a place called the Coogee Aquarium Baths. Now, you might hear that and think, oh, is that like Monterey Bay Aquarium, but with like a spa attached? Lower your standards now. Yeah. The Coogee Aquarium Baths were really just a great big swimming pool, and they would pump in seawater, and in the winter, they would go fish for sharks and other predators and creatures from the ocean and chuck them into the water and charge people to ogle them. And in the spring and summer, they would fill it with seawater, but they would let swimmers come in, and I don't know if you can read the sign, but there was mixed bathing. So, yeah. But why, this begs the question, why would you go all the way to the ocean only to get like 100 feet away from the water that is free and pay money to swim in somebody's pool? Probably has something to do with these guys. And now we know these days sharks are really an utterly insignificant threat to humans, but in that era, Sydney probably had more human shark incursions than the baseline, which has a lot to do with waste management. Because the slaughterhouses in New South Wales would dispose of their trimmings, let's call it, the cheapest route, which is pitch it in the ocean. So they're literally chumming the waters on the regular. And there were more sharks, and there were probably more shark attacks. So yeah, maybe I would pay a shilling to swim in that bath. Okay, but this happens in the fall of 1935, and the aquarium baths brought in their newest catch, which was a 14-foot-long, 1-ton tiger shark. But it wasn't acting very sharky in the pool. It was kind of hanging at the bottom all week, in lethargic until April 25th. That afternoon, it suddenly started convulsing violently, whipping around the pool, smashing its head into the ends of it. It's very sad. And then the barfing started. Yeah, copious amounts of brown, frothy puke comes out of this poor shark, and it clouds up the entire pool. But when it finally clears, bystanders are a bit alarmed to see the remains, the poorly digested remains of a bird, a rat. Why was it swimming in the ocean? And a human arm with a rope tied around its wrist. So the last one created quite a sensation, as you might imagine. And within a few days, sadly, the shark was killed, so a necropsy could be performed. And in the stomach, where they were expecting to find more parts of the person that it ate, they did not find anything but parts of a smaller shark that it ate. So gang, we've got a mystery on our hands. Now the cops really only had one thing to go on, which was that arm. And luckily for them, it did have a distinctive tattoo, fisticuffs. Yeah. So they gave this picture to the local press in an effort to get some leads. And within a few days, a man named Edward Smith recognized this tattoo, and he called up his sister-in-law, and he said, "Hey, have you seen your husband recently?" And she had not seen or heard from him in weeks. So the two of them went to the police and said, "We believe this arm belonged to Jim Smith." And the police were like, "Oh, Jim Smith, we got his prints on file and we can check it against this arm." And they did make a positive ID, but why did they have his prints on file? Well, Smith was, from all my research, he was poor, but I think he was a very hardworking man. And in the grips of the Great Depression, he got desperate, started turning to some crime. And when he was being criminal, it was usually under the direction of two wealthy business owners from the Sydney area. I know how to talk on stage. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. This is Albert Stannard. He owned a large, successful kind of maritime operations business, and this is Reginald Holmes. And his family business was boat building, specific. Thank you. I love you so much. Boats. He's building speedboats and luxury yachts for very wealthy clients. And I'm not saying that when you bring two men together with these skill sets that smuggling is inevitable, but I am here to tell you that is exactly what was happening all through the Great Depression. These guys were smuggling drugs in and out of Sydney Harbor in great quantities. And not just drugs, any old contraband would do. And hey, let's get into fraud as well. So one of those frauds they attempted to perpetrate was in 1934. They bought a very fancy yacht and insured it for vastly more than it was worth, and hired Jim Smith to scuttle it. Now, he did it so poorly and met up so spectacularly that they ended up withdrawing the insurance claim because there were a lot of pointed questions from the insurance inspectors, and they were on the verge of being arrested and sent to jail. So Smith, by all rights, should have, slunk away with his tail between his legs for screwing this up so badly. Instead, he's got the chutzpah to go to Reginald Holmes and start blackmailing him. He says, I'm going to go public with all of this if you don't start giving me money. And Holmes, who at this point was still well respected in the business community and in the Presbyterian church, was like, okay, I'm going to pay you because I don't want to be found out. Chutzpah. You got it. So 1934 into 1935, he's blackmailing, he's getting money, and at some point he lets something slip that he really ought not have. He's been a police informant all along. I appreciate your sagacity. Yeah, he's got a target on his back now. So, April 8th, 1935 was the last time that Jim Smith was seen alive. Here we go, the cottage. Okay, so he spent the day with his friend and a fellow con man named Patrick Brady, and were to spend the night in the cottage that Brady had rented down on the seashore well south of Sydney. This next bit doesn't really drive the narrative at all, but I can't let it go. The man who owned this cottage and rented it to Brady gave it the name Cord Joy. For the life of me, I don't know what that means, but I don't want it in my search history, so I didn't try to find out. Okay. This is Patrick Brady. The police figured he was the last person Smith haul him in, and he is suspect number one for this murder. And he says, "Look, I had nothing to do with the death of Smith, but I can tell you who you should really be talking to. Talk to Reginald Holmes because he's the person who ordered this murder." So they go and they bring Holmes in, who's now really freaked out. He's terrified, but he manages to keep tight. He doesn't give away anything to the police, and so in a bit of desperate move, they get Brady out of his cell, bring him up into the same interrogation room, and these guys are face to face, and they know each other really well because they've both been criminals in Sydney for ages and ages. And Brady, sure enough, says, "Yep, that's the guy." And Holmes says, "Never seen him in my life." So the cops are stymied. They got nothing to go on, but they're desperate to look like they're making some progress in this very, very high visibility case. So they charge Brady with the murder anyway. Okay, that was May 17th. By May 20th, Holmes was rattled on the verge of a nervous breakdown and had probably been drinking brandy from the time he got back from the police station to this particular morning, because the morning of the 20th, still drunk, he gets on a speedboat in Lavender Bay. That's up in the top middle of the slide there. Shoot. And thank you. Wow. God. Don't make me cry. Okay, so I'm bringing this home, okay? Here we go. Okay, Lavender Bay, he gets on the speedboat. He's got two things with him. He's got a bottle of brandy, and he's got a handgun. So he motors out into the bay a bit, cuts the engine, stands up. He puts the gun to his forehead and pulls the trigger. Now, bystanders nearby on the shore hear the gunshot, and they turn to see a body falling into the water, and so they summon the police. And Sydney's water police come in the Nemesis. This is the Nemesis, their brand new chase boat, and they're expecting to do a body recovery kind of scene. So they're surprised as anybody when they get to his boat and find that Holmes is not dead in the water. In fact, he's climbed back into the boat, he's at the controls, he's drinking again, and he's sure as hell not going to let the cops on his boat. So he guns it and puts on a chase. Now, keep in mind, this man just shot himself in the head. And remarkably, that bullet flattened out on his skull and didn't penetrate, but he was bleeding profusely down his face. Science and luck? So the chase goes on for hours. So long, in fact, that at one point, the cops have to pull off and get a fresh tank of gas. And Holmes could have made good his escape, I assume, but he's still hanging out in the bay, and they come back and they chase some more. And after 4 hours, Holmes finally runs out of fuel and brandy, and the cops haul him in. And now he's changing his story, and he says, yeah, okay, I know Brady, and I know that he killed him. And the cops said, are you going to say that in court? And he's like, sure. So a couple of weeks later, thank you, disregard the constabulary is the preferred phrasing, thank you. A couple of weeks later, it's the first day of the inquest into the murder, and early that morning, like pre-dawn, Holmes is found dead in his car, 3 bullets to the chest. So, without their star witness and with only circumstantial evidence, they can't make it stick on Brady. He's acquitted. Smith's body to this day has never been recovered, and no one has ever been held responsible, and that's the end. Oh, wait! Oh, you want to know how the arm got in the ocean, don't you? Okay, I knew it. Okay, so no one knows for sure. But last year, this book was published, and the authors really created the most thorough account of this incident that's ever been put together. And they come up with with one really very important conclusion, and that is that. Do I got him? Yeah. Oh, Albert Stannard, the operations guy. He was likely behind both of the murders. Now, it's pretty easy to explain the murder of Holmes because Holmes was a wreck, and if he started telling the truth to the police, it was going to take Stannard down for sure. But then when it comes to Smith, he was an informant, remember? And so Stannard sent his goons to that cottage to abduct and kill him, effectively coring his joy. And then they came back with the severed arm and left it on the dining room table as a very clear message to Brady that you're going to go along with whatever we say you're going along with, and you're not going to talk. So he got a very clear message out there. So Brady, in possession of his friend's arm now in his cottage, knows he's got to get rid of this evidence somehow. So, and he can't just, bury it in the sand nearby. So he drives way up north from this cottage he rented and tosses it into the ocean near the Coogee Aquarium baths. So, my friends, this is how, let's see if we get these builds right. This is how we ended up with an arm in the ocean that was eaten by a shark, that was eaten in turn by a much larger shark. Oh, God, now I got ahead of myself. Okay, all right, that's okay. Eaten by a much larger shark who had the spectacular misfortune of barfing up both the arm and Sydney's secrets of the underworld in the aquarium pool. So, okay, thank you. Thank you. So, you guys, I've done a lot of these talks, and afterwards people often come up to me and remark on how good I am at finding a story that has no protagonist, no likable or even relatable characters, and very messy, unsatisfying endings. So I've done it again, but let's raise our glasses of brandy and say, hey, to the sharks, right? My God. Come back, sharks. Okay, I'm going to put to the sharks, right? They never needed this. They never deserved it. So, to the sharks. Thank you.